I'm honored to be joined by, I would say, maybe inarguably the greatest American soccer player, at least
Well, if
ChatGPT.
you ask my
When
mom,
I put
yeah,
it in, no, I put it into ChatGPT, who was the greatest American soccer player, and you were the first name they spit out.
I
Well,
appreciate that.
there is no greatest American soccer player, but if one were to, yeah, it's Landon Donovan. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, Al.
Um, look, everyone is talking about the World Cup. Let's start there. Uh, I think there's hope in the soccer community that the World Cup will function as a before and after, right? It'll be like, this is what American soccer was like. And then the World Cup was here in 2026, and this is what it was like afterward.
Yeah,
Do you think that is a reasonable take, or is there some concern that maybe we're overhyping this a little bit?
maybe both. But let me take you back to 94, the first time the World Cup was here. I was a 12-year-old. And for the first time in my life, after going to the Rose Bowl to see Argentina play Romania, my eyes were open to this bigger world of soccer. At that point, all I cared about was getting a scholarship to go to UCLA and play soccer. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, this world exists. And so you think about how far the sport has come since then. We now have a professional league in this country, Major League Soccer, and all of the millions of young people who are going to watch this summer. And there is quantifiable data that will be released after the World Cup and what it did and viewership and all. And then there's the subjective anecdotal data that will tell you in 10 years, 20 years, that the sport has gotten bigger and bigger because of this.
Let's talk about the men's team. What would you define as a successful World Cup for them?
Good question. I am reluctant to put like markers as if they get this far or if they get this far. For me, in my opinion, is two things need to happen for it to be a success. A deep run into the tournament, and that's subjective, and how we define that is
Quarterfinals or further, maybe?
well, let
Just
me just put it this
historically.
way. So historically, the tournament had 32 teams. Now there are 48 teams. So there is an extra round of knockouts. Instead of round of 16, now there'll be a round of 32, and then 16, 8, etc. So if they got to the round of 32 and something happened where they face Spain or Brazil and it's a really good game, but they go out, okay, it's fine. I expect them to get through a round of 32 game, and then we'll see what happens. But a deep run into the tournament, certainly out of the group stage, and then one or two or three iconic moments, because that's what really grabs people. It doesn't have to, of course, if we get to the final and win it, that's the best case scenario. But an iconic moment or two changes everything with everybody watching. The way social media is now, that would be awesome.
How did it change your life? You have an iconic moment.
Completely changed my life. And social media didn't exist at that time in 2010. And I can tell you, again, anecdotally, and then I can tell you financially, personally, what it's done. People who come up to me every day and speak to me completely changed my life. And that's the hope for this summer.
Another, I think, lens of focus is what it will do for the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it will be transformative for the MLS?
Depends on how you define transformative, right? It will help MLS. There's no question. My hope for MLS is that there are now, every owner in MLS is a multi-billionaire, right? And so they have the ability to spend in a way that MLS didn't have previously. My hope is that not only from the fan standpoint, there's engagement and people coming into the game. My hope is also that the owners see what this sport is big picture around the globe and go to a game and watch Argentina play Austria in Dallas and go, oh my God, look at these players, look at this excitement. Look, I want that player. I'm going to start spending in a way that makes the league continue to grow. That would be amazing.
So I want just to push on that a little bit. Are you thinking that maybe there's still some level of ignorance among the owners that these players kind of don't
Not
exist?
ignorance. It's just, if you have not been exposed to that level, I don't know how many owners have been to a World Cup game, right? I'm guessing there are some who have not been to a World Cup
Sure.
game. When you see the level of excitement, and probably a lot of the owners grew up around college football or college basketball or other sports.
Yeah.
If you go to an Auburn, Alabama game and you go, oh my God, the level of passion and pride.
Right.
If you think of a World Cup, it's that with national pride on top of it. And so you just can't compare it until you're there and you see it in the stadium. You see 30,000 Argentinians and 30,000 Austrians and what that means to their country and the way the players represent that. It's a whole different ballgame.
You played in both Europe and many years in the MLS. Where do you think the MLS is currently relative to these strongest leagues in Europe? Like,
Well,
how,
still not the strongest leagues.
yeah, certainly.
There are 5 or 6 or 7 leagues, probably 5 or 6 leagues, clearly better than MLS, and then it's pretty close. And so if you look at, if I just look at 5 to 7 years ago, the way teams were spending and the types of players they were bringing in versus today, completely different. And so the level of play has grown significantly. It's taking the rest of the world time to understand that and realize that. But the reality is MLS teams now are getting very good.
You mentioned that the owners are, billionaires at this stage, um, which probably leaves people like yourself an opportunity to buy a minority stake if you wanted, but not a majority. Have you thought about that at
Many
all?
times, yeah. There are the challenges is there are the sort of legacy owners who have they have their teams and nobody's getting involved. And then there are new owners, and I've had a lot of those conversations. That's something I'd absolutely be interested in.
And then, I mean, as a minority owner, would you want some sort of control over the franchise? Would that be the incentive for you, or
Well, you're
would this
never
be
going to have
a
control if
pure
you're
investment?
my
Well, no, but like for instance, Tom
no.
Brady with the Raiders,
Sure,
right? Like
it's a
he's a
great
minority owner,
analogy.
but yeah,
Great analogy. I don't need to be involved with a team just to say I'm involved with a team. I have a very small investment in a League One team in England, Lincoln City, that is very enjoyable for me. I am consulted on things. I don't make any final decisions on anything. I give my opinion where needed. That's a role that would be phenomenal. And there are a lot of owners still and a lot of organizations who I think in all sports could use somebody with some expertise to help them in these moments. It doesn't mean you're making decisions, but just to look at things differently from a former player. I was also a coach. I'm now a broadcaster. There are lots of different ways to look at the game. And I think a lot of franchises and a lot of teams miss out on that. And I think what the Raiders are doing, I'm a Raider fan. What the Raiders are doing with Brady, I think is really smart.
and maybe a template for something you'd want to do.
I would love to do something like that. Yeah.
Right. There's you juggled playing the MLS with playing on the men's national team. I'm curious if you have a good enough window into sort of today's players in today's game about how the current players balance those two opportunities next to each other compared to when you were playing. Is it similar? Has something
It's a
changed in
great
recent
question.
years?
It is different now. And part of the reason is when I played, most of the players had, let's just call it what it is. They had their salary from their club team, but the supplemental income from the national team was relevant. Today, it is so skewed. All of their money comes from their club team, and they do get paid by the national team, but it's not a motivating factor in any way. Now, in my opinion, and I think everybody watching would say, well, it's your national team. You should do that for free, right?
The patriotism.
And in
yeah.
many countries, Brazil, et cetera, they play for free for their national team. It's an honor. They would pay to play for their national team. In our country, I don't think we've always felt that same pride, or I should say this generation doesn't feel that same pride all the time. And I think our coach now is trying to reinstill that in them
And
because
how do you do that?
it's a great question. I don't know. How do you?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean,
Because for me, it it was it was a no-brainer, right? And it was obvious that playing for your country at that time was the highest level and honor. Now, in fairness to these players, they're playing at big clubs around the world, and that's a big deal every week. But your national team should still mean something to you.
it may help that the men's hockey team and the women's team too both won. Maybe coaches can sort of point to that and say, see what this.
No question. And it's less about the winning. It's what you could tell what it meant to them.
Yeah.
And I'm half Canadian too. I know what it means to the Canadian hockey team, right, to go to that tournament. They're not getting paid for that. They could care less. It means everything. And you could see in our American players after winning, it meant everything, watching the women and crying and the men. And it was amazing. And that's what it should mean to play for your country.
I'm curious your thoughts on the MLS's deal with Apple, because the MLS got a lot of money, $250 million for that deal per season,
Mhm.
but it has somewhat limited the audience because you have to be an Apple TV subscriber to watch, so it's not on a broadcast network or a cable network.
Yeah.
Has that done the league a disservice?
It's interesting. We had Don Garber. I do a podcast with Tim Howard every week, and we had Don Garber, the MLS commissioner, on. And he framed it in a really interesting way. And I think he was being on, a lot of times people of that, or they're spinning things and all. But he was very honest, and he said, "Look, Landon, we started out this deal and we thought it was going to go a certain way. We put it behind the paywall. We had first behind Apple and then behind a paywall, and we thought it was going to go a certain
Right, it
way."
was a double paywall.
Yeah.
It was the Apple, and
And
then
he
you had to pay
said,
even more money
like
up.
anything, we reassessed and we said, okay, it's not working behind a double paywall. So now, as long as you have Apple TV, now you can watch the games for free, which I thought was a really great way to say it, and also really smart thing to do. My opinion is that the league is still not, and the sport is still not mature enough that we can just do without the NBCs of the world or the Fox or ABC or CBS to help promote the game, because we're still trying to promote the game, right? So these things are way above my head, but it's just my personal opinion, and I think we need to still grow the sport.
We've got this book sitting between us.
Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Did I put it there?
Tell me why you decided to write the book. Why now?
Yeah.
And I think you get pretty detailed about your mental health challenges in the book. So just tell people
Yeah,
about what's in there.
I love sports. I've read a lot of sports memoirs. Candidly, they're not all that interesting because they kind of end up being like a chronological timeline of what happened on the field, and I'm just not interested in that. I had no need to write a book. I wanted, and this is maybe a little cheesy, but I have had as many comments from people in my life post 2010 Algeria goal saying, thank you for speaking about depression. Thank you for being honest about how you didn't have a father growing up and what it was like for a single mom, really poor single mom growing up and raising kids. That has really resonated with me. I love soccer, but listening to you talk about that has meant a lot to me. I hear that comment as much as I do great goal against Algeria. And so if this can help a few people, then it's worth it. And I think it's really relatable to a lot of groups, single moms, people who had estranged relationships with their fathers. Not till 25 did I reconnect with my dad in a real way. We had some moments growing up, but my dad passed away 4 months ago, and I'm so grateful that I had that time with him. People who struggle with depression. There's a lot of relatable pieces to the book that I think people will find interesting.
So how do you become the greatest American player of all time from a single mom and a poor family? Like, how does that
That's a
happen?
great question. It's a great question. So we'll get deep. So I only learned this through lots of therapy. I was constantly chasing, Alex, this desire, insatiable desire to be noticed. And where did that come from? It came from not having my dad around. So every time I score a goal and there was adulation and cheers, it felt like, oh, my dad will accept me now. My dad will accept me now. And it was never enough, never enough. And I was chasing it and chasing it. And this is a common
Consciously or subconsciously?
subconsciously until therapy.
Okay.
And then at 25, I started therapy and I started going, oh, that's why I'm like always seeking attention and always wanting the spotlight. And because I want my dad to run, maybe now he'll love me. Maybe now he'll want to be around me. And I think it's a pretty common story with people who are highly successful. It might not be their dad, but there's something they were chasing that was driving them to be successful. And that's what it was for me.
I mean, more nuts and bolts though. Like, at what age do you realize, or your mom realizes, like, oh, there's something unusual going on here with your talent level?
Well, you have to remember at that time, MLS didn't
Right.
exist. So it was right when it was when I finally went through puberty and started to grow, because I was a really skinny like boy and I was good and talented, but then I became fast and strong and a man at like 14, 15. And at that point I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And then I started trying out for teams and making it and ended up on the youth national team. And then it became, oh, this could be real.
And then is that like putting strain on your mom to have to drive you around to these things, or does
You have no idea.
Right.
My mom was a special ed teacher. So she would wake up at 6, get us ready for school. We walked to schools a mile from the time we were 6 years old. So nowadays, that's like, can't even imagine letting your kid walk a mile at 6. We walked to school because she had to go work. She would come home, prepare dinner, get us ready for bed. And then when I started making teams, she was driving me 30 minutes to practice, 30 minutes back. Well, my sister and brother were home doing who knows what. She was on a special ed teacher's salary making $30,000 a year. Dad was not paying child support. I don't know how she did it. I mean, honestly, I don't know if you have kids, but like once you have kids, you look at that situation, you're like, how the hell did she do that? It's a miracle.
Uh, Good segue. How are you treating soccer with your kids? How old are your kids?
Great question. 10, 8, and 7.
Right. And do they play in youth leagues? Are they
Yep,
interested in it?
very much so. My wife gets mad at me because I'm the opposite of what you might think. I don't push them at all, to the point where my wife's like, you could just go outside and play with them. And I'm like, I don't want them to think I'm pushing them. She's like, just go play with them. It's fine. But I let them be. And good anecdote, because last night my son had his first practice again for the first time in 2.5 years. At 8, he had a bad experience with his club team and then didn't want to play anymore. And I was like, oh, it broke my heart. But I let it go. And over the last year, he's been playing soccer more at school and just like playing during recess and whatever. And I said, do you ever want to try out again and maybe play for not this big club that's all about money and all that, but do you want to play for a smaller club? And he was like, I'll try it. Tried out. He loved it. He's doing amazing. He had his first practice, and it's like it's such a source of pride now to see him. I just want them to love the game. I know the data. He's not going to be a pro. Right? Like I know the statistics. I just want him to really love
Do
the
the
game.
coaches pull on you at all?
They haven't so far.
Uh,
Sometimes they like want to talk soccer with me a lot, but I'm like,
right.
okay, that's fine.
But yeah, okay. That's probably par for the course, I would think.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about the mental health issues in it. There's a scene you describe in this book where you are very candid with like you're starting to think about, should I end my own life? I mean, can you just sort of walk me through what you
Sure.
remember?
So I've had 3 major depressive episodes in my life. 2 of them were like situational, meaning something happened that really hit me hard. The third one was drug induced. I was in Cambodia. I never during my career, never did drugs, never smoked weed, nothing. Decided to try smoking weed, went way overboard, and ended up in this hallucination, really crazy place. And with someone who is susceptible to depression and anxiety, this was the worst case scenario. And I had a night after smoking that almost ended my life. I was going in between. If I closed my eyes, my brain was telling me just end it, end it. I was on a little island in Cambodia with a cliff off the end of my
And you went to
villa.
Cambodia alone.
I did.
Yeah.
And my eyes, when I closed my eyes, my brain was telling me, just go jump, it'll be over and done.
This
And
is
then
what age are you at this point?
31.
31. So this is post. You're a
I'm a grown man.
grown man and also like a national celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I opened my eyes, I was hallucinating. And so I didn't want, it was driving me crazy. So I had to close my eyes. But when I closed my eyes, I was being tempted to jump and commit suicide. And honestly, what saved my life through therapy, I learned how to meditate. And meditation is all about being present right here in this moment. And in that moment, somewhere along that line of that open eyes, close eyes, I came back to my breath. And it allowed me to just sit and breathe and come back to the breath. And all these things were happening and come back to the breath. And that's what got me through the next few hours until I woke up.
How are you able to juggle? Because you mentioned you had 3 different episodes, and because you're playing soccer during
Yeah.
this whole time.
Yep.
How are you juggling being at that peak level of performance and also
Not
this thing hanging over
not
you?
well.
Uh,
I mean,
Are
there
you
were,
going through therapy at the time?
yeah,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
but there were the 2 prior episodes were 2-week periods where I really couldn't get off the couch, couldn't sleep at night.
Do your teammates know about this?
No, and I kind of mentioned it to my coach, but, I have a job to do, I'm getting paid. So I would show up to training and train and then go back home and sit on my couch. And there was one game, this really sticks out. I don't talk about this in the book, but this really stuck out. I was 2 weeks of on my couch, not sleeping, not eating, and I'm trying to perform at the highest level as an athlete. And I remember talking to Juliet, my therapist, and I said, Juliet, I don't know how I can play in this game tomorrow. I I I have no energy. I have nothing. She said, do me a favor. I have goosebumps when I tell this. She said, do me a favor. When you walk out of the stadium or you walk out into the stadium, find a little 5 or 6-year-old kid, boy, sitting in the stands, and just imagine you're playing for yourself. That's him. And just like find a way to get through it. And I got through it. So it was all a fog and whatever, but I found a little boy. He has no idea to this day who he was, but he inspired me to just get through that day.
Uh, is any part of you still think, you know what, if I train for this, like I could still play?
Right now?
Yeah.
No, did you see me walk in here? I'm like
No.
limping. No, I mean, no. Time waits for nobody, and like as you get older, every step of life that you get older, everything hurts more. You have a glass of wine, it hurts more the next day. Like it's just hard, but no.
And
I
you
would like to say
well,
yes.
I was gonna say any desire to? Do you still
No.
have that thing? No.
0.0.
So let's talk about sort of like your retirement life now. Are you starting to think about like what's next? I mean, you mentioned the ownership thing is but potentially something you'd want to do. Are
Yeah.
you starting to think about new business opportunities? Has that been an easy transition for you?
Easier for me than most because of all the therapy I did through my career. I think a lot of people get to the end and it's over and they go, shoot, now what? Now what do I do? A lot of athletes do, I know for sure. But it's not like I was preparing for what was next. I was just more at peace that it was going to be done someday. So, yes, to answer your question, very interested in lots of different things. I talked about the Lincoln City investment that is really enjoyable. My next frontier, this will be by far the most important thing I do in this sport is tackling youth soccer. In our country, as a general statement, it's a complete disaster. It is greedy. It is winning first. The players are the last thing on anyone's mind, the kids. And it's really disgusting. I've now seen it twice with my own kids. And so it's triggered. I've always been passionate about it, but it's really triggered me. And that will be my next frontier. And I'm moving quickly on this.
Meaning, how do we build a league that's not so obsessed with winning at such a young age?
Not a league, a sport, right? And look, to change culture is hard because the parents are part of the problem, right? The parents will tell you, "Oh, it's da da da," but then they get out there and the parents are on the sideline yelling like, "Johnny, no! Oh, how did you miss the goal?" And so that is going to be very difficult. But it's very clear for me how you fix this. Very easy, but nobody's done it because the incentive structure is backwards. And winning is what's rewarded for the coaches, for the players, for the parents, for the club, and we need to change that. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that we're not producing players, world-class players, the way other countries are. It's not like we're killing it, and so we can just deal with the winning. We're not producing those players. We're
Do
not
you think that is related to youth soccer?
100%. You can't have, I mean, think about the analogy I'll use is school. Right? If we don't have good teachers teaching our kids, they're not just going to end up doing amazing things. They need to be taught. We all need to be taught. And it's the same thing in soccer.
And maybe it's pulling back on the financial motivation at such an early age that allows teachers to teach these kids sort of more for the love of the game rather than anything else.
Correct.
That's the thing, the thought.
You want ultimately, look, I'm a great example. Clint Dempsey, who's one of the best ever in our country, we're great. We came from nothing. Had no my first soccer coach had a baseball hat and a clipboard and a whistle and baseball cleats on. I wasn't taught how to play. I learned by myself. Now imagine if I had good coaching the whole way,
Mm.
what I would have ended up as. We don't have that in this country. And look, that was that was an extreme example. It's better now. But until the incentive structure changes, nothing's going to change.
Pick up Landon's book. Sounds like a good one. And thank you for doing this,
My
Landon.
pleasure. Thanks, Alex.
Appreciate it.